Hi, I'm Susan Drumm, and welcome to this special edition 7-episode podcast of the Leaders Playlist, where you can use the power of music and neuroscience to transform your leadership and your life. And I'm here today with Amber Vilhauer, and I've asked her to come on the show to ask me anything she wants about the book. And Amber is just a complete rock star because she's an online digital marketing expert. She supports authors, speakers, and coaches. We've been in a mastermind together. I love her energy. I love her focused on the power of connection, and decided she would be great to come and talk about the book together. So welcome, Amber. Thanks for coming on.
This is actually a super special moment for me. This feels personal to me, Susan. So thanks for letting me be one of the lucky 7. And it's personal because I've watched this journey and I have heard about your remarkable client success. And I mean that. This is a woman that impresses me so much, everyone. I cannot believe who she gets to talk to and the impact that she makes. And so when I heard about her book that was coming out, and this was maybe a year and a half ago, Susan, that we started this conversation, I was hooked. I was interested. I mean, I launch books for a living. I've never heard of a book like this before. So I was sort of, Susan, your cheerleader, like, keep going. This is amazing. And as we got closer to the book timeline and I got to learn more and more about it and look at your media kit, it just felt so aligned with what the world needs right now. So it's really exciting for me to be here. And I want to start by taking you back to the moment when you had the idea to write a book. Like, I want to know, what's that story? And it could have just been a Saturday afternoon when you got an idea, or maybe it was some other catalyst, but that's really interesting to me because the idea of writing a book, it's a scary one. It's a daunting one for a lot of people. So what made you come up with a crazy idea to write a book to begin with?
Right. Well, I had wanted to write a book for years. I almost feel like a decade. And
Okay.
I really enjoy the process of writing, but I never really give myself that opportunity to do it. And I wanted to do it through a book. And so to take that on, it always felt daunting. How am I possibly going to find the time to do this on a steady, consistent basis? And on top of it, I also knew that I did not want to put out and rehash the same things that were already out there in the leadership world. And so many books are like saying the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, I won't be able to pour my heart and soul into something that doesn't have a fresh take, a unique spin, offer something that will be really valuable to people, because that I can put my energy around, right? That I can invest. So I think it was finally, I was like, I'm not even sure what I'm writing about initially.
Really?
But I had these experiences and I knew that there was something there, and it came together through the writing process, honestly.
That's so great. So can you shed a little bit of a light on, like, what have you observed in the leadership space and how is that different than what you're bringing to the world?
Yeah, I've been doing this work a long time. I think before people even knew what leadership coaching was. I remember, it's been almost 20 years. Back when I would describe what I did, people were like, huh? And now it's, the big consulting firms are in it. The recruiting firms have their leadership practices. So it's really been an industry that's blossomed and grown and changed over the years. But the thing that I've seen along the way is so much of what's happening in the workplace and how people are leading was a direct reflection of whatever survival strategy they needed to learn to get by in their childhood, and ultimately whatever wound they sustained. And we all have some kind of wound from childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever wound they sustain shows up in how they lead and where their focus of attention goes and how they perceive the world. And some of that can be good and it lights our fire. And I often talk about that being more of a superpower, but it comes with some heavy liabilities, particularly as you try to scale in an organization when you're leading now multiple levels down. And you find that old strategy just doesn't work as effectively.
So true.
And so you've got to go beyond that. And
Yeah.
that's what I was most interested in, really helping leaders both see the patterning, see the connection, and understand that that survival strategy doesn't have to be the way that they lead going forward.
Wow, deep work. Really a critical time for that too. I mean, even with COVID kicking off, and then we face so much uncertainty and fear, and then all of the changes in the workplace, and then battles with retention. And I mean, it feels like a really chaotic environment right now, the world of business. And so how does that relate to the leaders playlist? Like, why is now the perfect time to launch your book? And why is now the right time for any type of leader in an organization to get their hands on it and to really immerse themselves so that they can change and adopt these principles? Why now?
Yeah, now is, you look at the level of complexity that we're dealing with is far beyond anything we could have imagined. I mean,
Fact.
Post-pandemic and supply chain and great resignation and all these macro trends, inflation, right? All these macro trends are hitting leaders, and they're having to juggle far more than they ever could. And I think it's a little bit like, if we try to approach these issues, with let's say an old iPhone, if you had like an iPhone 4 or something and you tried to run the apps that are required today, you just can't do it, right? And
Oh,
it's the same thing with our brain and our leadership and how we perceive the world. And there's this great quote by Einstein that has just become sort of a mantra to me, that our current problems cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that created them.
It's a fact.
And so if we're in a situation where it feels like, I don't know how to solve this problem, we've got to upgrade our own internal operating system to do that. And I think that we are at that stage, right? And then you look at the mental health challenges that many people are dealing with coming out of such a stressful time. You've got to get a handle for yourself of like, where is my sort of mental capacity limited? And what do I need to do in order to be the kind of leader to help others through this? And so I think it's sort of now more than ever. And it's kind of like, we've got to do this.
I know. And I'm thinking, Susan, like, all of these issues are converging, and it's all stacked on top of each other and compressed down. And I experienced that in my own business. I mean, so this is very personal to me, even at my level. I've observed what's going on in mental health, and even seeing how team members, family members, and just the general public, it's impacting everybody. And leaders have never had so much pressure, especially headed into some of the economic uncertainty that we're headed into right now, this season. The pressure is outrageous. So let's say I get your book. Walk me through like the journey I'm going to experience in your book. Could you do that?
Yeah. So first, we talk about why now. We talk about this concept that your childhood wounds do show up in your workplace, but that actually music is a unique way to shift this patterning. So it goes into the detail around how music affects the brain and how it's such a powerful, almost a brain hack to help you make change. And the reason is that music lights up all regions of the brain. It's why Alzheimer's patients come alive when they are unresponsive, and you put on their favorite music, and all of a sudden it's like they're back. So think about the power of just that. And when music, because it gets to our emotional core, ultimately music has this power to shift state. And as a former actor, I know the power of that. You study how to shift state, right? And I thought, God, if music is sort of a shortcut to help people shift state, how can we both do that, but also get to the deep-rooted issues, not just like, hey, I'm going into presentation, let me put on my favorite song. Like, yes, that's awesome, but let's take it like many layers deeper to say, what's this undercurrent patterning going on in how you show up in the world, and how do you change that using music? So it's a ambitious undertaking, but it works because it worked for me and
Yeah,
it
I
works
love
for the
it.
clients I've worked with.
Well, and I was fortunate enough to get some early access to some of your materials. And on one of them, you have different playlists, right, for different moods that you want to evoke. And there was a song on there, Freedom. And I remember one day, a few months back, where I was in the thick of it, Susan. I was just having one of those days where it felt like everything was caving in and I was frustrated. And I had a big company meeting that I was running later that afternoon. And I thought, I'm just going to put this song on and see what happens. And I started filtering through the different songs in that playlist that you recommended. Oh my gosh. First of all, it was an instant state that was shifted. I mean, it was just all of a sudden, it was like I was able to let go of some of that overwhelm or anxiety or confusion that I was feeling. I felt lifted up. But then I thought what happened was so interesting because it almost allowed me this freedom, not to use the word of the song, but it allowed me almost this freedom to then look at, wow, look at the state that I was in before. Where was that coming from? So it was like it put me in this state of being where I could actually look at it objectively and understand that. And then when I started to look, okay, so this is almost a patterning of when I get in this situation, this is my reaction. So what's my unmet need? And who do I want to be going into this meeting? Like, by the way, this whole experience I just described happened within maybe 3 minutes. It was so fast. And I just thought, wow, Susan Drumm, like this is powerful work. And that's probably just scratching the surface of what people are actually going to experience when they start to use this work consistently. I'd be curious, do you have a story of like a client, something that comes to mind as one of your favorite stories that relates to this work that you could just share with us for fun?
Yeah, I worked with a woman who was getting 360 feedback, which often 360 meaning they get feedback from peers and direct reports and their bosses. And she was a senior leader. And the feedback was that she came across as controlling and trying to be in every conversation, and felt like she, was a little bit like she needed to stay in her own swim lane, so to speak, not necessarily, do the work. And so we took a deeper look at that to say, gosh, what's really going on? And from her perspective, she's like, but those things impact my business and they impact. And I'm like, I get that. But there's something about the way you're coming across that isn't working in this environment. So let's look at what that is, because you've got good intentions there. And when honestly, we looked at this pattern, her old playlist was I'm Left Out. And it started from childhood when her sister got all the attention. Her sister was sort of the beautiful one in her eyes, and she was the mousy one in her eyes. And, sister got all the attention. And I think it was a recurring pattern growing up of feeling left out of that. And so
Wow.
to not relive that again, her big strategy was like, I'm not going to let that happen again. And so her focus of attention was pointed on where she was left out of things, as opposed to looking at where she was included. So we used the song. We wanted to have an old playlist that would catch her before she would go down the 8-line highway to hell, I call it. And what would that song be that catch her? And she picked Adele's Hello, because that song for her is just like, hello, can you hear me? Like,
yes,
this sort of woman, a little bit pleading.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, so when she felt that, like, oh my God, this is happening and I'm not part of it, she's like, oh, there's Adele again. Yeah, there's Adele. Like she could catch herself and say, I don't want to be that. I don't want to come with that energy. And her new playlist is I Am Welcome. She played these songs. And the more she did that, the more she sort of relaxed that energy, and the more, it's surprising, she got invited to things, right? Because she wasn't pushing.
Oh my gosh.
But because her energy shifted, the external world shifted. So that's really one of my favorite stories, because it just really highlights how you use an old playlist to interrupt the pattern, and how you can create a new playlist to really start to groove in an additional pattern.
Gosh, that is so cool. That's really inspiring, Susan. I don't know anybody else having these types of conversations. That's got to be so exciting for you as you're headed in to launch this important work into the world with that kind of confidence and empowerment. I mean, I know in general, launching anything can be a little like, ooh, but
right.
Man, I have to tell you, from my perspective, I just want everybody watching this to please pay attention to Susan. I want you to follow her. I want you to buy bulk copies, give it to your mastermind friends. I want you to share it with podcast hosts. This is the type of woman, this is the type of content that deserves to be elevated and heard. And I'm not just saying that because I know Susan. I think Susan's spoken for herself on this interview and in the work that she's doing in the world. But I just hope that right now, when people are so stuck in their own head and their own experience, that I can break a little bit of that barrier to say, this is real. And this is the real work that I think is going to make a difference. One last question, if I may. I love asking authors this question, but is there a moment in the book? Is there a section or a story or a teaching point or something in that book that's like your favorite part, or the thing that if people can only hear one story or one teaching point from you, this is the thing that you want people to know? So either your favorite or the most important, or both.
I think, I'm fairly also vulnerable about my own story and my own wound and how that showed up in my life. And I tell a story from two different perspectives, vastly different perspectives, about a work situation that I had. And it's really just highlights the power of what you focus on really becomes your story, and you think it's the truth, but it doesn't have to be. And you can take any circumstance that feels like, you're frustrated because you weren't able to manifest what you wanted, or you felt blindsided, or whatever it may be, and tell the story from a different perspective. And this sort of idea, the same way you can get off the old playlist and onto the new playlist. And I think that story just really highlights that perspective, and how we will add or delete important information to bolster our point of view or story. And as human beings, we do this all the time, right? All you have to do is turn on the TV to see this, right? And we don't even know we're doing it.
Yeah. Wow. I can't wait. I cannot wait for October, Susan. I'm proud of you. Congratulations. This is big. I'm so happy that
I'm so grateful. Thank you for being such a supporter of this work, helping me magnify the message out here, coming on today to talk about it, and being curious enough and applying it, right? Not but actually using it and testing it out. So that just makes me super excited. And this is probably the biggest endeavor of my career, to put something like this out here. And my hope is it just really helps people and catches on like wildfire. So that's my goal.
I want the exact same thing for you. So we need all of you listeners right now to share this with as many people as you can. Put it in your email list, share it on your social media, tell your friends about it. That is what it's going to take. It takes a village to lift somebody up with such an important message. So you've got my full support.
And thank you. And we're all in it. So, we all have a role to play in the transformation of what could happen for leadership, for our planet. And we're all going to be affected by that if we don't. So it's time to kind of really step out and do that. So thank you. And thanks for supporting the work, and let's all lead the way. Curious about the concepts we talked about in this episode? Go to theleadersplaylistbook.com to learn more and purchase the book. And stay tuned for the next episode of The Leaders Playlist.